Welcome everybody to the question and answer session of the Research Forum. We are joined today by Lisa Wilson, who is the new head of our IRB. So welcome, Lisa, and Jamal Matthew, who is Jamal, your title always changes. You're the Associate Dean of Informatics. Okay, I got it right. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Betsy Nugent. I'm the Chief Clinical Research Officer at UW Health and the Director of the UW Clinical Trials Institute. So welcome everyone. We have some questions that were submitted earlier that we'll start with, but as you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and Rochelle Rano and Kevin Kiley will be monitoring that so we can answer the questions. So we'll kick off with the first one that I think it should be pretty straightforward for all of us. And we'll start with Jamal. What are you most excited about in your office with regard to your priorities for 2023?
Right. So I'm excited about a lot of things, but if I were to pick like 3 topics, number one, some of you may know, we are doing an informatics and IT integration across the school now. We had a very distributed IT and informatics that, causes a lot of challenges. So we are very excited that this will enable us to integrate all our forces, bring together all the staff, and do very exciting projects. And one of the exciting projects, or 2 of them, is we are going to be putting a $1 million investment from the school to build a genomics driven cloud or cluster, high performance cluster, so that we can have people manage and analyze their omics data. And the second one is we are going to invest in, with the help from campus, there'll be a $2 million investment geared towards imaging. And that'll be to prepare a platform for acquiring, managing, analyzing imaging data, and also, sharing imaging data. So in addition to the $2 million, we'll be investing in 10% each of 4 or 5 faculty members who would report to me in that capacity. And I'm very excited that that will enable us to bring in state-of-the-art imaging infrastructure as well as capabilities to our school. The third one that I'm very excited about is we'll soon be starting an effort on Wisconsin-wide cohort and biobanking collections. So that's another exciting project. So these 3 are what excites me at the moment, and very excited to work with many of you in the upcoming year on these.
Great, thanks, Jamal. Lisa, the same question. What are you most excited about in your office with regard to your priorities for 2023?
Sure. So there's a number of different priorities that are focused on both IRB efficiency as well as helping our study teams navigate the process and providing them with more resources and guidance. And so one of the things that we are both have made some progress on and are still working on is helping investigators to enroll more participants with limited English proficiency. So we have a broader bank of already translated short forms, and those are really helpful when a study team unexpectedly encounters an individual where they need a translated form. And then we have a number of analysts in the office who are looking at gathering more data on available resources. So if you need a long form consent translation, if you need an interpreter, what are the resources available to people? What is the feasibility of a bank for collecting already translated instruments that could be used across multiple studies? So that's one area. Another area, our Reliant group in our Human Research Protection Program, and that's the group that helps people when you need single IRB review. So we're seeding review or we're accepting review. They're looking into a project for more flexibility for using additional commercial IRBs. So that is also something that will be really helpful for study teams.
Great, thanks, Lisa. And I'll just follow up the rear here with a few things that we're really excited about for the coming year. One is that we're preparing for East Park and the opening of East Park, and that being a patient-centric research facility for clinical trials. And so there's a lot of work going on right now to figure that out, but it's just really exciting to have our research infrastructure expand to a new ambulatory clinic. So really excited about that, although a lot of work. And thank you to all of you who are helping with that work, because it is a lot. The second thing that we're getting excited about is we're going to start preparing for the accreditation process probably this fall. And so that's really exciting work. East Park will be the location of our first accreditation. So we feel like we build it from scratch. It might be a little bit easier to get ready for accreditation. So we're hoping to do that work in conjunction with East Park. So really excited about the future for that. And our clinical trials keep growing. And so excited about the new University of Wisconsin Clinical Trials Institute, which is a partnership between the main campus, SMPH, and UW Health, and our ability to provide better and more efficient service to our investigators. So those are the areas that I'm most excited about for this year. There's another question that relates to the University of Wisconsin Clinical Trials Institute. And so that question is, for departments that lie outside of the University of Wisconsin Clinical Trials Institute, how are you ensuring that they have a voice and representation in discussions and decisions about institutional clinical research changes? Alternately, is the intention that all clinical research teams fall under the Clinical Trials Institute, and how has that been communicated to departments and to research teams? That's a great question. So the University of Wisconsin Clinical Trials Institute is relatively new. We're only a couple months old. While we do provide departmental services, we are sort of this multi-institutional body that has an advisory board and steering committees, et cetera, that help to make decisions across all three organizations related to clinical trials. So, for example, we have just recently put forward our first multi-institutional policy around clinical trials. And so these policies are meant to cover all the work that is happening in clinical trials at the three organizations. That said, we do often have work groups or groups that help us select systems or help us with processes. And so we try and get as much departmental representation as we can. We realize that that is an ask from departments. But in addition to that, we do bring these issues to the Council of Chairs, to leadership at both SMPH, UW Health, as well as the Vice Chancellor for Research and Graduate Education in making these decisions. So they're really meant to be institutional decisions. That said, many groups are opting to come into the University of Wisconsin Clinical Trials Institute in a partnership. So we may provide some services, they may do others, but really working together to bring best practices into play. So I think a little bit of this remains to be seen as we go through the next several years, what ultimately the CTI will look like. But we hope to get feedback from multiple departments so that we can just have a better clinical trials enterprise going forward. Let's see, Jamal, I think this is for you. It says, I'd like to hear more about advances in data transfer and sharing of human imaging data between SMPH and UW Health. Are there any tools available today that facilitate this research and improve multidisciplinary collaborations, or is this planned for the future?
Yeah, so I think I touched upon this in my answer to the prior question, but we will be, so from, we'll be investing about $2 million to bring in new technology for imaging. And also, like I said, 4 or 5 select faculty members with informatics expertise to integrate and analyze that data. So it will probably take us a year to purchase the right, hardware, software, everything, implement it, and also have the environment built. But that's exactly what we want to do. So we want to facilitate easy access to imaging data and a framework for analysis of that data.
Great, thanks so much, Jamal. And I did see a question in the chat about what kind of accreditation we'll be going for at East Park. That is part of the SASE clinical site accreditation. And so it's an accreditation process, much like you've seen a HARP accreditation or Joint Commission accreditation. It actually accredits clinical research sites as being high quality sites. So that's the accreditation that we're going for at East Park. And if we get it, we'll be one of the first sites to have that accreditation, or we may be the first site. We'll see. Depends on how long it takes us, I guess. Let's see. Jamal, here's another one for you. Can you talk about the overall vision for systems to support clinical trials at UW?
Yeah, so overall systems to support clinical trials, include the OnCore, which is our clinical trials management system. It's integrated with Epic. Another one is the system for managing all our regulatory documents called Florence. And then, obviously the IRB system. So what we want to do over the next, and then something like RedCap for capturing the scientific data. So what we want to do is do integrations amongst these tools so that, you can minimize the duplicate data entry, and you can promote and facilitate the workflows. So that's what we want to focus over the next couple of years.
Great, thanks so much, Jamal. We have another question here for Lisa, and then I'll get to some of the questions about the UROC committee. Let's see. Sometimes the IRB says a recruitment is allowed with UW Health approval, but then UW Health says no. Is there a way to have more consistency with the IRB and UW Health in terms of what's allowed for recruitment?
I would say we do our best to try to align as much as possible, certainly. And we have a number of ways that we do that. We have UW Health people who are on the IRB. We have various different committees where we work together and talk about issues. But there are going to be cases, because we're sometimes looking at different things. The IRB is looking at the requirements that we have to look at under federal regulations and making a determination about, for instance, is this recruitment appropriate? The IRB can say yes, but there may be other considerations that are really different that we really can't weigh in on. So we're not always going to be able to anticipate or convey hospital policies or procedures when that really might need UW Health input. I can think of an example of recruitment where the IRB might say this method is fine, but subsequently there's a determination that perhaps the way in which somebody wants to use the record really isn't going to capture the population that they need. That's not something the IRB would necessarily be able to comment on. We would need like the data analyst to comment, and that could happen after IRB review.
Great, thanks, Lisa.
And Betsy, maybe this is an opportunity to talk about our joint efforts to improve recruitment.
Well, that was the next question.
Oh, okay.
Everybody had. They saw the announcement about recruitment and they wanted to know more about what that entails.
Yeah, so Betsy and I had been working together. We have a policy committee that Lisa participates in, and many others from both UW Health and UW SMPH. So with the help of all those people, we had been streamlining how recruitment could be done using clinical systems. So we are going to have a joint team between Betsy and myself to improve recruitment. So July 1st onwards, we are hoping that this new team will shape up and have its own legs and feet. So we'll have an intake process, and that will help you with some of these problems, hopefully, because if there are some inconsistencies, we'll be able to identify it, but you will be able to essentially say that this is a study that we want help with recruitment. We will be able to pull up recruitment lists for you, like candidate patient lists. We will be able to help you with my chart recruitment if that is appropriate. In rare cases, if it's a rare study or something that needs immediate attention, we may be able to create BPAs to support it. So that obviously we'll use sparingly because we don't want to bombard providers with a lot of trials. The idea is that you will outline these recruitment methods in your IRB proposal, or you will be amending your existing studies. And a lot of the methods, including my chart, will be for non-interventional studies to start with. So, but the team will guide you through the process and help you, and that may down the road help reduce these discrepancies.
Great, thanks, Jomal. So I think there are a number of questions related to the UROC committee. So for those of you who are not familiar with the new UROC committee, it's it's kind of a mouthful. It's the UW Health SMPH Research Operations Committee. So UROC is the acronym we're going with. And this is really I like to call it an operational feasibility committee. It's modeled after the feasibility committee that we had during COVID that really helped us implement studies really quickly for our investigators and for our patients. And we got really great feedback around that. And so we are implementing a similar committee in a pilot fashion starting July 1. So we're gonna have studies going through the UROC committee starting July 1, and then are working with the IRB and study teams to sort of refine the process to make sure that we have it right. It does include, and I actually am going to pull up a slide here if I can. Let me see if I can find it here. That shows what is included in the UROC review. And so this does apply to all studies regardless of funder. But we're really looking at any prospective study that is not oncology and requires UW Health facilities, staff, equipment, procedures, and/or patients, or takes place in any SMPH space involving human subjects. The other category that would be required would be studies that do not require UW Health resources, but require SMPH resources, such as imaging studies in WIMR or nutrition studies that recruit patients directly from the community. So data-only studies are not included, retrospective chart reviews are not included, studies where all you're doing is interviewing, surveying, or doing a focus group is not included, as well as single patient use, expanded access, humanitarian use, those are not included. So this process, we hope, will eventually become sort of the feasibility process for studies. We'll actually have this active discussion about the protocol with our operational partners at UW Health, and researchers and all the folks we need. So PRC, CRU, all having a discussion about the study so that we make sure when it opens, we're ready to go and everything flows smoothly. So part of the reason for this committee is that we have had a few studies where we've gone through all the work and process to open the study and then found out we couldn't actually do it at UW Health. It doesn't happen that often, but it happens enough that it's really problematic because obviously we've spent a ton of money to get a study open and then we aren't even able to perform. So really the goal of this committee is to help study teams and investigators be able to operationalize their study in the best way possible. Now, there are really two ways this can happen. One is the study could be expedited, in which maybe you're just doing a blood draw, or you're doing something very simple that we know can happen, described because of the way you've described it. Those can be expedited. And so those come to Nazia Safdar and I, and we can expedite it. There are other studies that may be more complex. They may go across departments. They may involve inpatient services or ambulatory services. They may include lab and imaging and pharmacy or emergency medicine. And so those studies will likely go to the full review of the committee. The review takes about a week, and then we make a recommendation. Quite often the recommendation are that you make a couple tweaks, and then you're ready to go. But if there's a serious problem with the study, we always sit down with the PI and the study team and have a discussion about how we can maybe mitigate that issue. So as I said, this is a pilot. It's something that we're just starting out, but we hope that the committee becomes more and more helpful to study teams as we move forward. So there have been a couple other questions around the committee. So will this committee process replace the research feasibility form that is currently submitted with seeded IRB applications or any IRB application? Our hope is that, yes, eventually this will replace some components of the feasibility process or feasibility form. It may also help replace the 311 form for nursing, since nursing will be at the table and we'll hear about the study there. So this committee is really about efficiency and getting things operationalized as quickly and as efficiently as we can within the systems that we have. Let's see. I think those were the questions. If others have additional questions related to that, please feel free to put them in the chat. And we can have a session about the UROC committee, a research forum about the UROC committee as well at some point. But we do have documents up on the uwclinicaltrials.org if you have questions. The other thing I will mention is we are working with the IRB to catch any studies that may have missed IRB or missed UROC before going to the IRB. And so if your study does hit the IRB before it went to UROC, we'll likely be reaching out and just asking you to submit that protocol to the UROC committee. Okay, great. Let me see what other questions we have here. Are there UW research teams that we see leading the way in successfully including historically underrepresented patients and participants in research? Oh, that's a great question. I think there are a number of teams that are really doing good work in this area. I mean, we can always do better, of course, but a couple come to mind. I think we see in some of the Alzheimer's group, they are doing a really great job of doing a broad outreach. I know as well that there are some studies, I think, Jamal, you're actually the PI of one of the studies that really looks across Wisconsin, not just in the Madison area, but cuts across a bigger swath of the state to bring opportunities to patients. Do you want to talk at all about that, Rochelle or Jamal?
Sure. So we have a historical cohort called the Survey of the Health of Wisconsin, or SHOW, which I'm currently the PI of, and we are in the process of expanding it or changing it, morphing it a little bit more into a real world, given the FDA's emphasis on real world studies, we are going to, change it into a real world cohort and actually will provide the ability through that cohort to recruit from the Wisconsin population. So I think I had mentioned in the last meeting, but if anybody is interested in, there are a few large studies that are currently using the platform meaning that cohort, to recruit from the community. So if you want to do that, please feel free to reach out and we'll help facilitate that.
Great, thanks
Other
so
thing
much.
that we will also do is when we provide recruitment lists, if you are interested in increasing diversity, we can try to do ADI based groupings for you in the recruitment lists. So you'll be able to see the areas. We can also try to do it geographically. So that'll help you to diversify your recruitment. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. Lisa, did you have any comments on that question?
Well, I had asked our analysts about this and got lots and lots of different groups that are looking into broad populations. Another one is the Center for Tobacco Research. They definitely are looking at a very broad, diverse population. There's a number of researchers who are working with Native American tribes in collaboration with those communities. So yeah, there's a lot of good research going on in that area.
Great, thanks. There's another question. I guess this is about CTI. It's not exactly worded that way, but it says, how specifically is your UW office signaling to lay public and off-campus neighbors that UW wants to advance community engaged research? So I think there are a number of ways that we're trying to do this. We can always do better, always. But I think we're trying to be more out in the community. So if any of you are at Juneteenth, you might have seen our folks out there working in the community just to bring the idea of clinical trials forward and have a presence in the community. We'll also be at Pride Fest and some other festivals this year. Additionally, we are really working to understand what we're going to need to do, particularly at East Park, to make clinical trials specifically more accessible to underrepresented populations. And that may mean things like having extended hours, having hours on Saturday, providing transportation. We're really looking to the community to provide input on what we need to do in order to be more accommodating to the needs of a larger swath of the population. And so there's some work there, but that's like just the very beginning. And we have a lot more work to do. So I think our first piece of work that Kevin Kiley, our communications director, is really working on is just getting the word out about UW clinical trials, what we're doing, how you find us, how you get involved in clinical trials. I know the Carbone Cancer Center has done a great job of that as well, and just continuing to get the word out there. I think the one thing to remember about many clinical trials is you have to have the disease to participate in the clinical trial. So while we have some that are open to healthy volunteers where we're collecting just blood samples or we're doing vaccines and things like that, a great many of our clinical trials are for patients that actually have disease. And so that's a pretty specific group, but we hope to, and I always quote Lynn Schnapp, the chair of Department of Medicine on this, we hope that we will eventually be able to provide the opportunity to participate in clinical trials to every patient that comes to UW Health and everyone in our communities. So that's our ultimate goal. And we have a long way to go to do that. But it's sort of our aspirational goal. Let's see, we had a couple other questions about UROC. I think hopefully Amy, Linda's post in the chat helped you a little bit with the workflow for UROC. That is posted if you'd like to see the workflow. We've tried to make it fairly simple and not an onerous application so that you can fit it easily into the workflow. The other thing is, yes, if a study is already open and recruiting, it does not need to go through UROC. UROC is for studies that will be newly opening after July 1st, or around that time frame, so that anything that's already been awarded and already is open obviously doesn't have to go through UROC because it's already operational. So those don't need to go through it. Just would be anything new that's coming up. There's another question about, I'm assuming, Jack, this is a question about the budget template, which is going into effect July 1st for all industry-sponsored clinical trials conducted at SMPH or UW Health. The budget template documents and the template itself are on the website. So if you want to go out and look, there are some that are non-negotiable fees, and you'll see those set, and others that are ranges for the department discretion. So that's all listed on those documents. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. Let's go back to this list. Oh, there's a question about the clinical research unit. So I do want to clarify that at the current time, the clinical research unit at the hospital is not supervised by or overseen by the UW-CTI. It's overseen by ICTR. So if there are questions about the CRU, at least at this point in time, you may want to address those to ICTR. The East Park clinical research area is overseen by the UW-CTI. And so we're working actively to get that staffed and get that up and running. And we're working with our collaborators at the CRU as well as UW Health Nursing. This question is related to the sustainability of the CRU. And it says, to be sustainable in the current economic environment, the CRU will soon have to change pricing structure that shifts more cost to researchers, further stressing already lean federal research budgets. Can you speak to how they plan to increase financial support personnel and or the physical infrastructure of the CRU and ancillary services that are needed to meet the demand and long-term growth of clinical research at UW? So I can talk about this a little bit generically about our plans to sort of increase the infrastructure and support of the clinical trials infrastructure. That would include areas that patients may be seen, so in exam rooms, CRU, other specialized spaces for research. So we are working closely with Dean John Adia on looking across our spaces in which we do research and trying to gain some efficiency and more access to those spaces. It's a shame when there is a clinical research space, but it's only used by maybe one team and it's left open for large periods of time when other people could be using it. So we're really looking at ways in which we can best utilize all of our clinical research space. That includes East Park, and all of the spaces that we have at SMPH as well as UW Health. We have asked for infrastructure funding to help to build up those spaces and to staff them up. so that we will have adequate facilities to perform what we need to clinically for research. Keep in mind that as we grow, our space will also need to grow, and we'll need to be very thoughtful about that. That's why we're so excited about East Park, because the space is a little bit flexible. So we can have research patients in research space and potentially some clinical space, as well as clinical patients in research space if we need to. So rather than saying this space is only allocated for this and this other space is only allocated for that, we have some flexibility so that when we have a large number of studies going on, we have extra rooms that we can use. We have consult rooms for people that are doing questionnaires or surveys and need to sit down with patients, or patients that need extra time on an informed consent. Additionally, we have clinical rooms that can go either way. They can go clinical, they can go research. And we're working on a staffing model with UW Health that allows for really flexible really flexible staffing that crosses both clinical and research nursing. So that's one of the things we're really excited about at East Park, and we hope that we can continue to build that same structure here at the hospital. It looks like, let's see. Let's see. Too many other questions. Let's see. Here's a question from Kelly Miller. Asking about, have we looked at other large research institutions, health systems that have robust recruitment to see what they're doing successfully to reach all patients that enter their system? It would be wonderful if every patient that registers for a clinic visit or is seen in the ED or the hospital or clinics is made aware of clinical trials opportunities available to them. We applaud you, Kelly. That's exactly what we aspire to do. I don't know, Jamal, if you would like to talk a little bit about that, and then we can maybe go to Lisa and myself. Go ahead, Jamal.
Yeah, so we do look at other institutions, and like I said, our policy committee, one of the things that we did is to actually look at some of the use cases from other places and seeing how we can facilitate it. My chart was one of the examples. So we do want to, you're exactly like Betsy said, we want to accomplish what you're suggesting there. We want to get there, and it will take us a little bit of time. We want to excel and outperform compared to other institutions, but definitely. And if any of you have thoughts on good models that we are not leveraging now, please let us know, and we'll be happy to see how we can facilitate it, adapt or adopt.
Thanks so much, Jamal. Lisa, do you have any thoughts from the IRB perspective about this?
Yeah, we get asked a lot about broad consent, which maybe is a little bit different of a question than what's being asked, just being made aware of trial opportunities. So I do think, yeah, I fully support that. I know that my chart has limitations because not everybody uses it. So I think it is just a matter of figuring out how to get that information into workflows and then have research teams that are available for when people do have questions and are interested in enrolling. People will be available to go through that consent process with them.
Thanks, Lisa. And Kelly, I saw that you put Kaiser seems to have been successful in these areas. And I just happen to have come here from Kaiser, so I'm really familiar with a lot of that. I think the other thing that I would throw out there is that Jamal and I are actively working with Epic and our really wonderful HealthLink teams that we will be expanding shortly. And I think I get really excited about the possibility of using technology to help us really identify and bring clinical trials to a broader group of our patients. And so I have a lot of passion about that. I know Jamal does as well. And I think we have a great partnership starting with Epic in this area. Plus, I think our recruitment team that Jamal was referring to has already done a lot of work and is really thoughtful. They're research professionals themselves, so they understand the frustration of getting to patients, but they have done some really, really amazing creative things. And we're just really excited about what the future may bring in terms of our ability to recruit with MyChart, but even other technologies that may reach patients that don't use MyChart. And how can we do a better job there? So appreciate the question, Kelly. It's something I know all three of us are super passionate about and we want to see happen. And hopefully over the next several years, we're going to start moving in that direction. Great. Well, I don't see any other questions here that we had listed. Are there any more questions from our audience that we can answer? And if not, we want to thank you so much for being part of the Research Forum.